let's take a look at the charts together. This is the Bitcoin CME chart up behind me currently, and the prices are 11,810, which puts us, just within striking distance of this gap that we had in the past, 11,695 up to 11,795. So we're just $15 away from the top end of that gap at the moment. Putting the price action back into an area where it kind of needed to get to, in a sense, to fill in that gap, and not very far beyond that. And I think that kind of draws out a little bit of a story for us just to begin off the episode. And of course, the remaining gap would take to see the prices go down as far as that mid 9,000 area, which would be very significant price action. So how are we shaping up at the minute? Have we got more room to go towards the top side? Well, there's always more room to go towards the top side, isn't there, in a sense? And what are the dangers approaching us at the minute, and where has the price action come to? Well, I think that we had this concept on the go of what could be considered a half staff bear flag now, or bull flag. Now, bull flags, I like to see bull flags normally, when I'm looking at a bull flag, kind of go this way, because that's kind of what more like a flag to me. That drawing tool wasn't very good for this, but more like that on a flagpole, like that, or like this, sort of, on a flagpole. And I don't really like seeing flag poles which look like this, because that's not really like a flag, because flags don't do that in the real world. And so this is this half staff idea instead, where it's actually looking to perhaps then move on beyond this area afterwards, much in the same way as these other bull flags go towards the top side. But this one's measured move is much simpler in the sense that you just look at the distance that it came up, and add it onto this side and go on up from there whenever that were to happen. And so if that were the case, what would that take us to? How would that look on the charts, and what would be the top side target? And where are we right now in terms of that pattern then? And okay, so if we were to move up towards the top side, as you can see, the sort of the move here could be coming from somewhere around about 9,000 up to somewhere around about 11,000. So if you stick a couple of grand onto the top of this here, then you're looking at going up to around about 14,000. And if we just zoom out a bit, then we can see that 14,785 number comes right in at that 1618 over here on this Fibonacci retracement. So that would be kind of like, the most ambitious topside target you could have currently, with obviously, if this were to happen, then upon approach of this, the situation would have changed, and what you'd be analyzing would be different, so your discussions could become different at that point, I suppose. But just just from just now point of view, because out there in the world, of course, there'll be tons of folk talking about things like all-time highs this year, etc., etc., etc. But we don't need to get too carried away with anything, especially having benefited from a bull run really since we talked about the start of this upward side movement over here in March. We can take a look at why that's kind of happened and how that could tie into the price action in a minute or two as well, I suppose, since I've just remembered it. So yeah, so where have we come so far? Well, we've had this sort of kind of this bearish divergence on the go as we've been coming in here and setting these highs. So that's not particularly positive. That's a sort of score one to the bad guys. Um, and also we've come down here to the lower end of this channel like that we have on here. So that's our score two to the bad guys. And in terms of where we've come from, with the bigger picture in mind, I suppose you could say that if we were to take it from over here, the Fibonacci down retracement down to roughly in about where our lows are there, going body to body more or less. Is that right? Whatever. Then we're in and around this sort of 786 zone. If we go body to body, I don't know what turned out to be. That might be it there. So yeah, we're at this 786 just right in here. So I will call that score three to the bad guys. As well. All right, just for now, just for now, just for the sort of structure of the show. Bad chat for the padded chat. So this is kind of your most positive like outlook in terms of the bullish case scenario. With the current price action, could we have this half staff thing? And I suppose in the sense then these haven't had the chance to kind of cool off a little bit is maybe to the good. So there's that, I suppose, perhaps, that we came out of this overbought zone and we've still been trending towards the top side. It is a bull market overall, and we're still in the bullish control zone. We're not actually out of the overbought zone here in the stochastics. Come down a bit here in the DMI to these sort of more sort of normal zones where the ADX is maybe going to get a chance to kind of like chill it in and around about this 50 area or 40 area before moving up to the 50s and crazy bullish type scenarios like that. So there is the potential for that. We'll call all of this score 2 to the good guys, and also suppose we've come down to the bottom end of this channel and we've not broken out of it just yet. We found support in and around, where that gap was previously, and that we came up to fill. So we'll call that score 3 to the good guys in terms of, these things have to happen in terms of you've got a trend on the go. You're going to have higher highs and higher lows and all that sort of jazz. So we're coming in for what could be conceivably be maybe a higher low over here. We could dive down the time frames and take a look at all of that in terms of divergence and whatever else. But we'll go over to the traditional charts to do that first off. I would then say that if we want to just kind of delineate this somehow into a sort of digestible format for us, we could look towards this area here at the 12,000, into the 12,000 area, and say that closes up above there very positive, recheck in with all of this, and maybe we just start moving towards the top side again. It's all gravy, maybe, and maybe the volume would come back in, etc., etc. If we were to able to actually close up above that 12k area, really, over the course, or look towards this sort of area here and say that movements down below and into that gap area again, and then below that, down past these previous lows that we've had on here, into the 10Ks again, you'd be going out past all these lows as well, breaking out from this channel, and we'd be looking at this zone here. So that those two lines are of course coming in at 11K and 10,800, where the 21 EMA finds itself currently. And overall, if that were to happen, you'd potentially just be looking at a higher low, before potentially moving up towards the top side. Sure, you would, or you could be sort of reassessing things and saying, how are we coming in? How's really what's going on in the bigger picture? Because there's various other things to be aware of. Just before I go to the traditional Bitcoin markets, for Bitstamp, BitMEX, whatever, let's just check in with the SPY and remind folk that the Americans markets have come all the way up towards where their all-time highs are. Again, having filled in this gap on the weekly. So in terms of like the Bitcoin pricing and the SPY pricing having had gaps above us, which could be getting filled before looking towards what happens next in the markets. Those have both kind of happened, which is something which is maybe of interest to folk. Of course, we're still waiting for everything to sort of pan itself out, pan its own heat in, and of course we've spoken about the divergence that is showing up there as well on this one. But like we said so often, it's an uptrend. It's curious that it's coming in at around about these zones at the same sort of time. You could consider these things to both be sort of still, not like this. The Bitcoin isn't necessarily a safe haven asset, as it were. What have I just come over to here? This is Bitstamp. We've not been on this chart for quite a while. That was that weekly trend line that we broke above, we found support at, moved up above again when we were at this crazy, good serrated blue line in here in this chart. What am I really looking over here for? Nothing particularly. Just can say that we came in pretty darn close to these sort of this 1272 area up above, on the 100% retrace effort. Let me just get rid of that. Sorry. And what else do we have here in terms of different retraces and everything else? What do we want to look at? Just going to actually just dive over to one of these other charts where it's cleaner, not cleaner, sorry, where we've got more recent chat about things on the go. So yeah, how are we shaping up with regards to? I forgot we had this on the go, of course. How could I? Where is this shaping up at? And this is the 24-hour chart. We spoke about this quite clearly as well yesterday up here, when it was had been at its highs. Talked about where we could be going as overall, and what the actually no, were we there? No, we just had our highs. Okay. So let's just zoom on in again, check in with the price action. We'll go down the time frames and see actually, because yesterday what we had done was just this movement right here, and we'd come back into this symmetrical triangle again area, and the question was, whether or not we'd be seeing downward price action, or if the prices were going to be able to then go towards the top side, having just filled in a gap that had appeared on the hourly CME chart over here, which happened, so that got filled. So that's where we were. So then we moved outside of the symmetrical triangle again, retook the 21, but then kind of came back down again, and we've just had this downward sort of descending triangle sort of formation potentially, or an Adam and Eve. It really depends how you want to look at that on this early time frame since. So you've got that, you've got let's do the brush for this, this part and this part. This kind of makes this area quite clearly important for us, which is inside the symmetrical triangle again. And the symmetrical triangle really at the minute, I suppose, just forms in terms of its purpose, really just kind of extends as far as saying where you could have sort of where you'd hope to see support coming in at from the bullish scenario sort of thing, given the just that, and coincidentally it'll probably match in with the sort of the height of this we just take another measuring stick. Yeah, so breakouts from the ascending descending triangle going down the way, or indeed from the Adam and Eve type pattern, whatever way you want to look at it, same maths essentially, would take you down either to here at sort of its max move, or perhaps in around this area at 11,500 at 50%. The sort of sorry, let me just zoom in a bit. Where the 618 is on that one. I've forgotten. My memory is not good today. Yeah, okay, so this is yeah. Anyway, well, that takes us down to this area, which is where our previous lows were. If we just get rid of all this crap as well, actually, at the minute, which is where our previous lows were. You can also see me talking in detail about all these Fibonacci's over the last couple of episodes, by the way, if you want to tune in and see what all that was, because we're still obviously within the same bounds of where we've been in price action recently, and we've discussed all of this in great detail with different things. So yeah, and so movements down below this sort of this if we call it, like we call this area at about 11,700, then movements down below there could see us coming down to where our previous lows were at that particular Fibonacci point, of course, as well. But where this is then at 11,500, and if we were to take that out, then of course that'd be quite negative in terms of everything overall. We've come all the way down towards the overbought zone here on the stochastics, and we've come down and been rejected from the bearish control zone on the RSI twice. There is still a downward sloping EMA on there, and it's obviously coming on down the way. We could see this encroach into this area if all of that were to follow through. If it doesn't, though, what we're looking at here is where the support is currently. So, longs particularly from this area aren't necessarily that bad an idea. Now, I'm not a financial advisor, none of that's financial advice, of course, but the first profit taking target would probably have to be, if you're being conservative about things, and it's not even that conservative, looking at it from a 1 hour point of view, could be up here towards the 11,860 area or so, where we've got this triangle forming. So this is why kind of then again it brings home the significance of that 12K area. And if we look up towards the top here in this shift adjusted pitchfork, where that 12,100 area or so is brings us into the top end of this, which again really does underline what I was kind of wanted to say earlier on, where that it's like 12,200 is really where you'd be looking at, instead of just the 12,000 area itself, for to be moving on past it. Going up there is simply just equaling off with highs that we've had in the past already, or even putting in lower ones. So that's kind of the scenario. And if we did put that in, then you could see quite clearly how the different targets would then operate again. It's this 11,700 where we are now, because this puts us back into the median channel of this thing. The median line itself coming in at the low end of this where the full measured move of this ascending triangle would take you down to, in terms of confluence. And also that's, yeah, so where the old symmetrical triangle, ascending triangle, the old this old support there was. Wait a minute, hold on there now. Actually, just go to the right here. You could be looking at this as well and thinking that we're going to have some sort of rising wedge on the go, or we already do, which is kind of curious. Just depends on obviously this is tying up in different things. We had various different stuff on the charts, and we still do. In terms of symmetric triangle, I just messed it all up looking at it. I think it's probably wise yourself to kind of look at this and be objective at it, and take some time and think to yourself, what really do we have here on the go? Is it one thing or another? Just dive up to the 4 hour time frame so we can see these candles kind of shaping up slightly differently, more in terms of their shape. What are we looking at as well? Because you can look at this in a number of different ways, just like with that symmetrical triangle we already spoke about, and all that, and this descending triangle that's just on this little chunk here, or this Adam and Eve. But there's also other ways you can look at it too. Just let me just get rid of this crap. Where the significance of this lower line comes in at, and of course the overall significance of taking out the previous highs comes in again at, if you're just kind of looking at it in terms of um, one of these sorts of parallel channels or whatever, or indeed if that's too sort of if that's not good enough for you, which is fine, then maybe you're looking at perhaps some sort of ascending broadening wedge thing, or yeah, various different things. All just kind of ties in. It's the same story no matter what way you cut it, with so many different ways that we on the charts. The 21 EMA and the 4 hour time frames coming in at 11,775. So we're below that at the minute, and we're still finding that we've just been supported by this particular upper line of the pitchfork. There's various different support lines, all kind of really quite well highlighted. What is it then that I need to talk about to get the message across better overall in terms of where we currently stand? Well, pushing past this zone has got to be of key importance, because if we do push past that zone and come up here with perhaps a slightly higher movement on the RSI and others et al. Down below, then we would be able to relinquish the bearish divergence that exists between this high and this high. And here on the RSI, the stochastics, the not the DMI, but on the MACD. So like four out of so the sort of the divergence that's there on a number of oscillators down below. So we're moving towards the top side, and that would be good. And we'd be taking out at the same time as taking out that high, you'd be taking out the previous high over here, which again was kind of coming in with a touch of that bearish divergence as well, just looking between this point and the previous point here on all of the oscillators down below. So you've got that whole concept that's happening in and around this key area. So you get the idea, right? That's the positivist and the negative scenario. Movements down below that could see the prices come down to as far as the lower end of this thing here at 10,900, and movements down below that then tie in no doubt with other targets that we've had looking down here 10,500 yet. So then if we take a parallel channel and extend it on down the way, whereas the next one thereafter could just nick one of the ones I've already got on because I'm struggling to remember where it is. Oh, there it is. Ding, 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 ding. So not got the angle perfect on that, but it's pretty much. So that would take you down to that 10,100 area, and that's a stone throw away from filling that gap in towards the lower side as well. So like there's various different ways that is also being around this previous support area on our way up here, and it would be a psychological blow to the market overall, as in the face of like lots of alts having done really really well recently. If you're not watching the other videos, you might want to, just so you keep your finger on the pulse of the market overall, looking at things like Link versus Bitcoin. This isn't too dissimilar to the Bitcoin chart itself. Versus the dollar, it's not too dissimilar in the sense that we've been rising up the way, but this is again versus Bitcoin rather than versus the dollar. Like versus the dollar, we've done extraordinary things since the end of July, in terms of percentage moves, going up 110% since the start of July versus the dollar, and going up versus Bitcoin since the 31st of July, 101%. So when that's all happening and money's kind of is in a sense, is it moving away from Bitcoin and into those other coins, and will we see the alt season perhaps having been going on the go when everybody's just finally getting around to talking about the bull market for Bitcoin? Then is that then what's going to happen? Perhaps they're just sort of one step behind on that front, and then it would then throw itself up as an opportunity for the next couple of months to then perhaps lean over to that side, or will we move it past this little plateau and the conversation get back on track again? Because that's what we're looking at just now. Upside targets and whatever else, I think I'll just leave to all the rest of YouTube land. I think other than what I've already covered. Um, um, let's just do one last one then, and call this an ascending triangle just here, so that people can kind of be aware of this. Just got that triangle, and we'll give it a measured move guy. Big whack takes you up to 13k, and if you just drag that down, more realistic. Well, it's 13 something, whatever. 13k is what we're sort of be looking at in terms of movements outside of this thing, and Yeah, well, that's that. That's just that. Let's just leave it at that. There'd be fake out territory that I could probably identify as well. Just simply looking back to the inflection zones around this area. We've got the 12, everything I spoke about before. 12,500 if it pushes past 12,200 but doesn't actually achieve anything up there. So that's that mid 12K area. But we've spoken at length about 12,200 and stuff. I'm going to have to leave it off there as the episode's gone on long enough. Thanks very much for tuning in. Really do appreciate it. Keep your eye out for things like divergences. Wee. Look at all the different both sides of the story. Have your own unbiased approach to things. Uh, we've been doing this fairly well, all right, for a while. So thanks very much for tuning in. By the way, as well, any failed along the way of these things, there's not going to be an inverse head and shoulders at the top side of these things because they're reversal patterns. If there was a head and shoulders type effort, then you could look out for it. This is still only looking down at the 4 hour. If you look up towards the 24 hour, then movement up towards those 12,500s could put in the head of one, come back down, whatever onwards. You could have Adam and Eve type things at the top if there were to be one. But other than that, we're still in an uptrend and everything's going well. And how we identify that as continuing on is to be taking out the previous highs. In the meantime, there is scope to move towards the downside because of all the way that these things are shaping up right now. And the easiest place to look to, really, just in terms of support for that's going to have to come at 11,150. Really, that's your summary. Catch you later.